Welcome to Living the Reclaim Life podcast. I'm Denisha. We're glad you're here for conversations that revive hope, inspire healing, and encourage you to live a vibrant life with Christ. So grab a cup of coffee as we chat with today's guest. When you experience a loss in your life, it can be devastating. And many people are alone during the grieving process. And today, I am so excited to introduce you to my friend, Ashley Hughes. And making sure that women are not alone during the grieving process is a passion of hers for the past 16 years. So we are so excited to have you today, Ashley, and hear about these amazing things that you are doing through Joy in the Mourning.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Denisha. I'm really excited to get to talk to you and share this passion. So 16 years for sure. Joy in the Mourning did not start overnight. It was a slow process. The Lord moved through my story, first of all, and it took probably about a good 14 years to start putting all the pieces together of what he was doing, not only through my story, but through other people and families that I had been a part of, their losses. So 16 years ago, my husband was murdered and I was young. I had married my high school sweetheart. We were only married for 2.5 months. And so having to face his loss, but also all the other losses that came with it during that time. That my grandmother had passed away about 2 weeks before him. My cousin passed away and killed himself in a car accident 9 months after he died. And then my neighbor that I actually helped take care of for a little bit of time, he passed away also within like that year or so. And it just felt like everybody around me was losing people. Of course, I had my own loss, and it was a really hard, lonely time. I was so young. I think people thought, "Oh, you'll bounce back. You'll be okay. You're young." And there were so many assumptions around his death that left me in a state of a lot of isolation and loneliness for a long time. And so when people would call me or say, "Hey, I know somebody that lost somebody or is going through something, can you talk to them?" I'd be like, "Yes, of course." Because I knew I needed that so much. So the first woman that I actually was able to help, she lost her husband about 2 months after I had lost mine. And that is the first woman I actually ended up helping. And it's just a weird story. And for me to even share this story now, it feels strange, but she lived pretty close to me. She had a little girl. She wasn't really plugged into a church. And I would just take her out to dinner or go help her with her daughter. Or at one point I ended up helping move her out of her apartment. And I was scrubbing her shower with one of those, those like Mr. Clean magic or eraser things. I'm just scrubbing. And it's like disintegrating in my hands. And finally at the end, I'm like, God, why am I here? You can kind of just look around like, okay, other friends, family, nobody else is here. I'm here, pretty much perfect stranger to her, helping her. And God just said, "Well, it's because you have me." And I just realized, okay, like, who am I to question God? So situation after situation that happened like that in my life. And there were a lot of them, even with that first year, of people I didn't know that well, or didn't know at all, and being able to talk to people and just be there in practical ways. I felt so helpful for it was healing for me. Like, okay, I'm going through some really rough stuff over here. I would come out of that little darkness and go and help. And I felt so much better after being able to help and just be there. And so really Joy in the Mourning now has been birthed out of this place of, and I'm not saying I was completely alone all the time, had nobody, but there were pockets of times, just those pockets of times people think, okay, we got through the funeral, they're fine. Or we got through the first, anniversary, they're okay. These things that we think, if I'm helping them through these situations, they're going to be fine now. But it's those in between months,
That's what I've always heard, is that after, I've had people say, don't come in right at the beginning, because that's when everybody comes in. Come in after everybody goes home. That's the time that they really need someone. Now, out of curiosity, the lady that you were magic erasering the shower, how long after you lost your husband were you coming alongside her?
That was in May. So it was about 2 months.
2 months.
2
And
months
you were
later.
19 when you lost your
I,
husband?
yeah, I was
Wow.
19. I turned 20 2 weeks after he had passed. So
Wow.
it was just a lot within a very short period of time.
Yeah, that is.
Again, we had trial and I had lawyers. I mean, so there was a lot that I had to process and go through pretty much on my own through that first year to year and a half of just things you think you're never going to be faced with, taking a plot and a gravestone and going through medical records, going through insurance. He was really smart. He actually had set up a lot of things that I would not have thought of, and there was a life insurance plan, but because of when he applied for it and when the first payment came out, the first payment actually came out the day he died. And
Wow.
I know I had a lawyer go and look into it, but because of that policy, I guess most of them, it's like 30 days or whatever it is. And we didn't qualify. So just the fact that he even had some of the stuff in place, and I kind of felt like an investigator, like trying to track down all these things. We were only married 2.5 months. So to be able to,
Yeah. And you're only 19.
yeah.
I mean, that's a
Yeah.
lot just to already have in place at 19, for him.
Yeah. Well,
He was,
right. He was a couple of years older, but his mama taught him really well. So
awesome. That's
she
awesome.
was the one, she really made him a man, and you got to be responsible and take care of these things. So his insurance on his vehicles was amazing. So yeah, so there was a lot of that investigative type stuff having to deal with. And so now looking back to see that God has used literally every experience and every pain and hurt to build out what the ministry is now, is we are coming alongside people in practical ways and support, from funeral planning to, do you need to talk to a financial advisor? Can we support you in buying you groceries? This is 3 months out. We've been able to pay rent for women that had to, in emergency situations, leave their houses, pay car expenses, U-Haul expenses. I mean, practical things that we don't think about, because the loss is compounded. It's not just one loss. It's not just loss of your spouse or your best friend. It's an income. It's that connecting piece that you had for your church or for these other relationships. And so you just think about so many levels of loss. Mm-hmm. And so we can come alongside them in these practical ways, but also just being there, showing up, having that, a hand to hold is so big during that time, and the consistency of it. I know that sometimes even me and all the loss I've been through, sometimes I don't know what to say, but I just know that if I'm there, that the Holy Spirit can utter what he wants to say. And if not, I just give him a big hug and I'm there. So it's very, very practical.
Yeah. I remember one time sitting with a friend in the hospital who was losing her husband in their 30s. And the pastor was in there with us. And when the wife walked out, I looked at the pastor and I said, "What do you say? What do you say?" And he looked at me and he goes, "You don't have to say anything. You just show up." And I remember that was so comforting for me. Like, I thought that's so profound, but yet we can find ourselves trying to say the right things, or what can I say to comfort? But I love what you just said, is that the Holy Spirit, he's just going to, take care of it. And we show up to just love and be there.
Yeah. And I found that they don't want you to say necessarily anything, because sometimes those words, as comforting as we think they are, or that Bible verse or that thing we thought, oh, that really helped me. Sometimes, it won't. Maybe they're in so much shock that it's not, it might not get through. I know there's moments, my best friend helped me walk through that time, and she lived in Chicago. So she only flew in for the funeral and then was gone. But some of those moments I still don't remember. She remembers. And I'm like, it didn't break through until the actual funeral happened. And so she had to be there through all of those moments. The first time I actually remember her physically next to me was at the funeral, but she's like, I was with you through all of that. And it's like, oh, wow. I do not even remember, but that's what happens with trauma and with loss and these things that happen, that your memory is kind of shot. And so don't look at it and don't think about it of like, they didn't say anything, or they didn't call me back, or they might not even remember that you were there. So that's why that consistency is so important. It's like you said, it's not just the funeral. Like, great, if you can be a part of that funeral time and helping them, awesome. But it's the week after, 2 weeks after, that month, literally carrying it out like the rest of their lives. If we're supposed to help each other and carry one another's burdens, what does that look like? It's not overnight,
Yeah.
it's a long haul. And that's why God put us in community and put us to be together. So yeah, so that's where a lot of this was birthed out of, is kind of the unfortunate, like, let's not do things the way that happened to me. Let's try to make this better for others so they don't have to go through that loss, and then the depression and the other things that can come with, I think are just really triggered by so much of that other stuff not being taken care of.
There's so much at that time too, when something happens. Not only are you in shock, but then there's all these things to take care of and a service to plan and all the people to tell. And there's so many pieces to that. So I am seeing an amazing woman before me who has said yes to God, who has said, yes, I'm going to step into this ministry with way more experience than you should have, than I wish you had for, walking into this. But he knew, right? There's always purpose for our pain. Okay. How do you handle this all, right? We're in the midst of this pandemic. I know we were talking beforehand that I feel like on Facebook, every time I go on, I'm finding out somebody else who has passed away recently. And how are you handling the influx? I mean, you can't do everything on your own. So how is that going for you? How is that working out for you?
Yeah. So I guess that is the hard thing when you put yourself out there and like, hey, I'm doing this ministry. Everybody wants to call you up, right? Because it's like, well, you're doing it. Now you do this. So there has been a little bit of pushback for me. I've realized I have to have my boundaries and my limits. And I know what those are, but also I know where I can help. And maybe if I'm not helping, I can help somebody else who is next to the person walking through it with them. And really that is the best part. And part of our mission and what we want to be able to do is commission others to help during times of bereavement, and not be scared and not be like, well, exactly what we're talking about, right? I don't know what to do, or I don't know what to say. Yeah. So I'm just not going to do anything, right? We're like paralyzed and we're frozen in this fear of maybe messing up that we just don't do anything. And so I like kind of comparing it to the Good Samaritan, right? The story of the Good Samaritan. Like, the guy is broken, battered. He's just on the side of the road. Everybody's passing by, whatever their judgment, or maybe, maybe some of his judgment, maybe some of it's like, oh, what can I really do to help? I don't know,
Yeah.
So if I get involved, what if those people that robbed him come and rob me? All of these things we can put with these situations, but what did the Good Samaritan do? He got him up. He got him to the hotel, right? So the place where he could stay, he paid for food. He did what he could do. He still had to go and do other business, but he told the innkeeper, right? The hotel guy, when I come back, if you need more money, I'm going to pay it at that time. Right. So there's even levels and ways that we think of, okay, we can help with these funeral costs, right? Mm-hmm. We can help get them some food and some shelter and be there for them. But the guy wasn't sitting there asking the Good Samaritan, are you a nurse? Are you a trained EMT? Like, what are your qualifications to help me? Like, he doesn't care. He just cares that you're there and you're helping him. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I like comparing it to that. And so right now, that has been a big encouragement for me, as to when people call me and when people say, I need help or this happened. Okay, well, what can you do? Can I help walk you through this with them? Because if I take it all on, like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then having faced myself some of like the most loss this year again, which it's weird how sometimes I think those happen in like waves. It feels like, definitely that first year I lost my husband. That was the most loss I'd ever experienced in my life. Yeah. And then there were some, trickled throughout the last 16 years, but then this year to be like hit again, it felt like a lot of personal losses for my husband and I. I am remarried and we have 3 beautiful children. And so that's been a wonderful redemption part of my story. But what I see in all of that is I have to keep my faith grounded in God. I have to know that no matter what happens, He is a good Father, and know that the purpose and the plans He has for us are still good, and that He still has a future. And even though we can see suffering and be a part of suffering and brokenness and walk alongside of these families where it's hard and it hurts. We still have the hope of heaven, but even sometimes that hope, it feels like it's shaky, right? Because we can look at the situation and be like, how are you going to make this good? Right. But I feel like God has been so comforting in that for me leading this ministry, that he's given me so much strength in those times, and even like dreams of people in heaven. And I just feel like it's such a beautiful comfort that I didn't expect to come. And so just knowing that we serve a God that has prepared a place for us, he prepared that place for our friends and family. And I want to do everything possible to make sure my friends and family are there, and the friends and family that I serve. Like, I want to make sure that they know, even if they're whoever they lost wasn't a believer, like, well, where are you at in this faith journey? Where are you at with your relationship with the Lord? Because it can be different. So that's a lot, I think, where it comes from. It's not me, like it's God and his goodness taking care of me during this time so I can help others. But I do have my moments of mourning, but I think that's where the name is so powerful. And I'm so blessed he gave me that name of joy in the morning, that we can still carry him and his strength during that time. We can still have joy. And mourning, how I look at it, mourning is a season. Like, it's not a life sentence, right? It's not like this thing we're going to carry the rest of our lives, because God says that he can come, he can heal the brokenhearted. Like, there's so many comforting verses, even within that, knowing that I don't have to carry this forever. And so if I mourn, if I surrender in that time of loss, if I'm saying and being honest, like we were kind of talking about before, like, this is hard. I don't want to do this sometimes, but then recognize the blessing that comes in it. And I am so humbled and glad that he's allowed me to witness these parts of people's lives where you see those reclaimed stories, right? You see this hope restored. You see people that maybe if we weren't there, where would they be? Because somebody wasn't there to represent Christ to them in that moment, like the Good Samaritan. If he didn't come by, where would that guy be? Right. Yeah. So we have to think about it, not in a sense of like us and what we're going through, but what can we give? How can we help these other families? And by that, we are blessed. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted, and so we get to comfort them. We're going to be comforted by others. Like, it's really this beautiful picture of what God set up in community and in the church, if we just let him do it. So that's very long answer to that question, but I want to see God do it and be open and surrendered and not run away from those hard times. Embrace them. And
you're running in. It's kind of like a first responder. You're running into the fire instead of running away. I think there's so much hope in what you're saying to provide to these families, is that there's a hope just to have that one consistent person. Not everybody has, a family member who will fly in and stay with you, or just that hope of knowing, hey, you're not going anywhere. You're a resource that I can call, who understands what I'm going through. And then when you mentioned commissioning other people, that is a huge passion of mine. And I just think the multiplication, like fast forward 5 years, and it's going to be so exciting to see what God is doing in Joy in the Morning. Because, and by the way, for those who are listening, if you haven't looked at the show notes, it's MOURNING. So it's mourning, as if, God comforts those who mourn. So joy in the morning. And it's just a beautiful picture of people who have been there like you, that God is raising them up to then be there for someone else. We did a lot of research on what it looks like to belong to community. And one of the things was connection, right? Or community, right? So first you come together in community, but we know that we can be in a crowded room and still be alone. Yeah. So the next thing is that connection. And then after connection comes contribution. And I just see, and then that equals belonging. So all the research that we've done, it's community to connection, that deeper sense, of relationship, contribution, and that is belonging. And that's what I see in your ministry. The contribution part is a part of us being commissioned, people who have been there, to be commissioned to then go out and help others. And that is just such a beautiful picture of the kingdom. I just thought it's so encouraging to know that like you're raising up an army 5 years from now, if we can see what God has in store for the future. And you started in 2019. Is that correct?
No, I applied for my status at the beginning of 2020. So
2020. Okay.
Yeah, it was pre-pandemic. I didn't know the pandemic was coming. I actually had, the dream was given to me in 2017, but I was pregnant with my third child. And so I think God had to take me through that process. And, you know, you got to get through like the nursing stage and diaper stage. And, you know, so for it to finally come to the fullness of it was like, okay, I got finished. Third child. He's a little more independent. I was feeling confident, like, okay, I had those people behind me. You know, I had some board members established and people like, yep, I think this is time. This is time. And it was like, okay, I guess this is time, you know? So I applied at the beginning of 2020. So I had no idea pandemic is coming. The most
friend, this ministry is needed more than ever right now. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I would have never imagined that pandemic would come. And when you're setting up a ministry like this, you're not like, oh, happy joy. Like I'm going to get to plan some of my best friends' funerals. Like you're not thinking this is what you're signing up for. I think, oh, this is community ministry, strangers. It's so much easier to walk strangers through this kind of stuff. And I have planned funerals for strangers before, because yes, it's hard, but it's not as hard as the first one that I was able to help plan was in July of 2020. And it was a very close friend of ours. He was a pastor. He was just so well loved and known in this community. And I just remember thinking, this is not why I set up this ministry. Like, yes, deep down you do, but you know, you're kind of like, well, it's easier to do strangers funerals than some of our closest friends or people that we know and have loved and respected for years. And so having those personal funerals as a ministry we've helped plan, I just look back
the last year and a half. Wow.
Just the last year and a half. And just looking back and being like, but I'm so glad we were there and that we were able to do it. You know, again, it's just, you look back and when you pray those prayers, you're like in Isaiah, like, who will go? Lord, send me. Okay.
Yeah.
But we don't have like a list of like, can you send me to Hawaii? And just, can you send me doing this fun stuff? Right. Like we think maybe there's been a weird picture painted for us in Christianity of what ministry really looks like. But then to really know those moments of God and God intervening and God just showing up and knowing, okay, this is why I'm here. And that is a weird thing. I think people might look at me and think, oh, she's always sad, or she's always planning funerals, or it's so sad. Like I can't express to you the amount of joy I have when I'm at a memorial, when I can see God working.
Amen.
You know, but that's the thing, you start looking for it and you can start seeing it and you can start knowing like, this isn't the end. So it's not a downer for me. You know, there's the moments, of course, I'm going to cry, but in 2020 to see the amount of loss, I started writing a list down and I felt horrible that I forgot some people that had died. You know, I just remember thinking, even like friends of ours that was like their parents, and then it just didn't dawn me because I saw my friend here that like, oh yeah, your dad just died. Sorry, I haven't checked in on that. You know, those types of things. Like I had to start writing down a list to just be like, I'm sorry, I forgot. Like there's just been a lot of loss. And I think we're all kind of get compassion fatigued. And like you said, or I don't know if we were talking about this before we started, but just like not even wanting to check Facebook, or we just knew these hits keep coming. So what we do in that is just, again, we have to surrender it to God, do what we can do, and then God's going to do what he can do.
Amen.
But if we don't keep moving, right, if we're just paralyzed and we just sit there and we don't offer the gifts and talents that he has given us, right, then those can never be multiplied. And so I think that that's what you were saying before, right? When you're able to give into that community, give into the mourning community, you see those things be multiplied. And so it's like the hope is multiplied. The joy is multiplied, the blessings, like we just see God is able to be at work. And so, that's what I'm just trying to do now. Just not be stagnant, not stay stuck when it gets hard,
Yeah.
to keep moving and keep asking, like, where do you want us? Because part of me wants to sometimes say no. Like, I can't do another one. There was just one last week. I think it was in August. We had a memorial, maybe that we weren't actually part of like planning, but we had a memorial every weekend. And I just remember thinking, I can't go to any more memorials. Like, I need a little break, God. Like, so just those parts of, again, knowing the limits, knowing, okay, well, maybe if I didn't make this memorial, but I know I'm going to be able to be there for the family or the friends of the family to help walk them through, and knowing it's okay, that God's got this. Like, this is his ministry. This is his dream.
Yes.
It's not all dependent on me or my husband and what we're doing or not doing, but we do want to be faithful and obedient. So that's kind of been 2020 and a wrap.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stuff.
And it's already almost Thanksgiving at the time of this recording, which is crazy that we're almost at the end of 2021. So I'm so thankful for your ministry, and just to have a resource for people who you feel like, what do I do next? And you get to meet them in that place. The passage that was coming to my mind as you were talking was, I forget where it is, but it said, we will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Amen. Yes, and I thought, that's what you get to help people see. I'm just going to cry. Yeah. You get to help people see the goodness of the Lord now, even in the midst of their grief, in the midst of their mourning and loss, that you get to help them to see that. And you get to watch God moving in the midst of that. And that, I'll bet that helps get you out of bed in the mornings.
Yes. Well, and it's almost, like I said, it is humbling, but it's almost addicting. I don't know, for lack of a better word, because it's just so powerful to see. So we just had, our official launch was last August. Because of COVID, it took all this time to get paperwork from IRS and all that to set up our official 501c3. But so August, I would say, was kind of like our official launch. We had done the memorial, like July was the beginning of August. And then we had started our community group. So the community is basically women that have been widowed. And we include in that sisterhood women that their husbands abandoned them. So we also call them women that are widowed. And we don't say they're widows, because their identity is not in that. So it's something that happened to them. It's not who they are.
Amen. Amen.
So that's a big part of that awareness piece. What I like to bring to people is women that are widowed, and that could be through death or through abandonment. And so we have about half and half of our community group that they have different stories, right? Again, it's not who they are. It's what happened to them. And so we started, our first community group was in October. So I remember just thinking, okay, we just got to get the first thing that we all do and we're all together. And I remember women coming and kind of being like, oh, okay, this is okay. Like, I'm glad there's a place to go now. It took a whole year to finally get it to the place where I wanted it, which was our retreat. And so during the retreat, it was a women about a half and half of the different stories, and women who showed up crying, like literally just crying, like they finally made it. They finally were able to show up. They were able to get there. And those same women left like bubbling with laughter. I tell you what, if I could do a retreat every weekend and I had the finances and the strength and, all the gumption to do it, I would do it, because it's so addicting to see, like,
life
see people
change.
see life change, see people show up on Friday and leave Sunday completely different. It was just so beautiful to watch and to witness. And I was just thanking God. And there's a woman, Monica, she's a part of the ministry now, and she helps do all of this. And we would just keep looking at each other. And I'm sure you've had these moments, you just look at each other and you're just like, I want to just sit and bawl because I'm so happy. But at the same time, like, we got to keep going. Like, we got stuff to do. But that was the beautiful part, was it wasn't me or Monica and what we did at the retreat. It was giving them this space to hear from the Lord.
Yes.
And giving them the permission to rest, and giving them that community and fun of the fellowship of eating meals together, like stuff that's so simple and it's so biblical, but it's like we forget that in our like haste of everything we're doing or we got to do or our schedule, and I think that's something 2020 also taught us. And I wish part would go back at times, but it just felt like everything slowed down.
Yeah.
And we focused and we were concerned about what was real and what was, needed. And so recognizing like that is a good thing, that we slow down, that we rest, that we focus on people.
And then it seemed to speed up so fast that I think we have to intentionally slow it back down. It just seemed to slow, like you said, it went from focused on people to now it feels like there's just busy work. Like everybody's just busy, busy, busy. And so, it being intentional with that slowness. I love that you had the opportunity to have a retreat and just get away with the ladies and provide that, holding that space for them just had to be a beautiful thing to experience.
Yeah, it was so beautiful and healing to know there was a part that we were just worshiping and just remembering those days of me like worshiping alone in my apartment and being so broken, and just to like then worship in a room full of women that have had similar stories of loneliness and isolation and brokenness. And then to be together, it was just so powerful of just like thanking God, like, thank you that you took this mess that I had no idea. I never thought going through it like, oh, this is going to be a ministry someday and this is going to help people. And, like but God, yes. And so it is humbling. And I'm sure like how you feel doing ministry, you just want everybody to be a part because you're like, you can be a part. And I think we can get, especially, I think I just saw a meme recently, but I was like, only America, the day after Thanksgiving, that we're grateful for everything, do we trample everybody, the Black Friday sales, right? It's like only in America. Yeah. And it's like, there is dissatisfaction in American culture and in the Christian culture because we might say over here, we're thankful for something or thankful for what we have, but actually we're really not. And we're like chasing this other stuff. Right. Mm-hmm. And so when I look at ministry and I want to look at our Christian faith, like the only way that you're going to be satisfied in your relationship with the Lord is if you're obedient to what he says. And we just really need to open our word and see. But that's where it's like when people are like, oh, we can complain a lot. I complain a lot too. We want to complain about all of these things. When we get back to the basics, we're thankful. Yeah. We serve others. We love as Christ loved. Like you will find the most satisfaction in life doing those things. And it almost feels selfish. I'm just like, come on, everybody, like, let's do this together because you'll have so much fun.
Well, we have a saying that if you've been walking with the Lord for 2 weeks, you can reach to someone who's been walking for a week. If you've been walking for 40 years, you can reach to someone who's been walking for 39. Like just that culture of mentoring, coming alongside one another and doing real life together is just a gift. That is really a gift. So I have a question for you. I know there's probably women listening who have experienced a loss, possibly of their husband or, even another family member at this time. I would love to hear your heart. What would you say to someone who's listening who has experienced in the last year a loss as you've described? Share with us your heart for them.
Yeah. So I always go back to my favorite verse. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is Jeremiah 29:11. For God knows the hopes and plans he has for us. He does not intend to harm us. I really cling to that verse. I still cling to that verse of that God is going to use your story. He's going to use the mess, but cling to him because they're still good and there is still a future. And so I think we can look at our lives and we can look at even now, like I'm remarried and I love my husband and I have children and it's been a beautiful life and we can get really caught up in this life that we have. But the thing is, God didn't just make us for people, like he made us for him. Mm-hmm. And so we look at like our future wasn't in that person. And that's what was really hard for me was like, I was a newlywed and what is our future? My future is just going to be bleak now because everything was supposed to be with him. So instead looking at our future and our future with Christ and how beautiful that can be and how amazing that can be. And I know there's things that we want, right? But nothing compares when we have that relationship with God. And so it took me a long time. And in that process of wrestling, especially that first year and a half after he died, of wrestling of, was God still good? And was this a life, what is my life going to be now? And all of these things that I'm sure they've wrestled with so many times, is just to continue to surrender it, speak those verses over yourself, live in them, know that he's real and that he loves you and he wants to comfort you. And my belief is that even though God knows everything that will happen, that he wasn't over there like, ha ha ha, like we're going to plan this. I believe he knows, and he knows so that he can comfort us. And so just allowing God to comfort you during this time, but really seek him out, because he wants to be there. He wants to be the one to give you that new life. And yeah, just rest in him, because I know that is a frantic time trying to figure out what's next, and it's hard, but I would just cling to him during it.
Thank you. Thank you. That's such a good point. Yeah. And Ashley, how can we find you and Joy in the Mourning? We may have people listening who are thinking, I would love to help support her ministry. And we may have people listening who think, I need her ministry. So how can we find you, friend?
Yeah. So our website is joyinthemourning.org. Like you said, MOURNING. We do have a contact us page on there. So if you want to contact us on there, you can. Also, we are on Facebook, but we are Joy in the Mourning National on Facebook. It's kind of a really cool God story, but basically the name Joy in the Mourning was actually given to me by a woman named Linda, and she still has her Facebook open with Joy in the Mourning. She actually ran a center in South Carolina, and that Joy in the Mourning Center helped thousands of people through the years. She did free counseling. She's just an amazing woman of God, but she retired and she's older now. And so the center wasn't open and the name wasn't being used besides her Facebook. It's a really cool God story, but yeah, we're friends now. And through our friendship, I never asked for it. She gave me the name. Of course, that's originally why I reached out, because I was like, hey, you have the name that I believe God gave me. So for God to just be like, yep, here it is. And another big sign, like, yes, I want you to do this ministry. So you can follow her page too. She's amazing. Linda, she has a Joy in the Mourning on Facebook, and then mine is Joy in the Mourning National. So,
okay. So I have to ask, are there plans to go national and expand beyond Tucson, Arizona?
Yes, ma'am.
Of course there is.
Yeah. So actually within the first 2 months of the ministry being out there, just through random story, we were able to start helping people in other areas of the country. So nice. we have already, like the one situation I was telling you about, where we paid rent for a family. They had an emergency move. They were in Kansas. We've helped women in California, other places of Arizona. So it's kind of like, honestly, how I was the last 15 years before starting the ministry. My favorite thing to do was do all these little things in secret and nobody know. I don't want to tell people about this, It was just my love relationship with God. I'm doing this for you. It doesn't matter who knows. And so when I started this ministry, it's you need to start telling people. And I was like, no, I did this for you. I don't want to tell people. So part of me kind of feels like that too, leading this ministry. I don't want to tell everybody everything we're doing for everybody, but it's not me doing it. And that's the amazing part. When you have supporters, when you have donors, when you have people that are they are a part of the ministry. That rent would not be paid without them giving,
Yeah.
So, and then the thing too of people that are running the ministry and that are a part, and it's that are passionate about this. Okay. They have groceries that they need. They have bills, all of these things, we're all a part of this, but we're also all giving into it in other ways. And so yeah, when people give, they're not only part of the ministry, they're part of supporting those that are supporting those people in those different ways. And it's really beautiful to see our support team has really grown over this last year, and just to be able to pray for them during their times of they're going through loss or, just some really amazing things I've seen through that piece. So when you're giving, it's not hey, I'm giving to these millionaires out there so they can maybe help people this much. No, the gifts come in are helping people a ton of ways. I just think it's God. So God that he gave me this, but it's just like for women to come and have a free retreat. Like that's just unheard of.
Yes.
Most widows retreats or whatever they call them around the country. I mean, they are expensive, and that's just not even something you would consider going to if you didn't have maybe some big life insurance policy or something that came through that you have that money. But that's the thing. It's like, that's for your life and that's for your livelihood the rest of your life. You shouldn't be spending all this money now to go on a retreat. So being able to bless women, you know, in those times and be like, that's yours. This is for us to bless you and not get from you. And I think those are just those lessons I learned early on. People thought she probably has a lot of life insurance. She probably has a lot of money, like, and that was not the case, you know? And so being able to just help people and be there is what those gifts do. Sorry, I talk a lot.
That is awesome. I love hearing about it. I love the retreat is free to the ladies. That is, I know it wasn't free to the ministry, but I love that it's free to the ladies. And that is so beautiful. Well, be sure to follow Ashley's ministry, Joy in the Mourning National, and also check out her website. I love your website. I was just on there last night again. I was like, oh, you've done new things to it. So joyinthemorning.org. And Ashley, thank you so much. Thank you for all you're doing to serve people and love people where they are. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. I love it. Amen.
Thanks for listening. I pray you found hope in today's conversation and maybe even feel a little less alone in your story. Stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram at Reclaimed Story. Want to learn more about living a reclaimed life and how you can be a part of our growing community of reclaimers? Check out our website at reclaimedstory.com. All of those links and more will be in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this inspirational podcast, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. That is a huge help in helping us reach more people to live the reclaimed life. Thank you so much for listening.